This is a 2008 RV and the graphics are starting to fade. I photographed each of the graphics and I turned them into black and white, and then I printed them and put them on the drawing board getting ready to trace them out. The vinyl cutter needs a DXF file, and that's what we're going to produce from these diagrams. I'm using Logic Trace 2018 and I've selected tracing polylines. The word Bigfoot was not a problem to trace, but I ended up having to enlarge the Bigfoot critter. I call it the critter. It was just a little bit too small, so I enlarged it to a full 8.5 by 11 sheet, and I drew it on its own. As I drew each section, I would save that part just in case I made a mess and I wanted to go back. I could edit it out and redraw it, or I could just reload the whole diagram. I'm used to drawing some pretty big diagrams, so this was a bit different because each diagram was 8.5 by 11, so I had to be careful. Again, I always put a red mark where I start because I seem to sometimes forget where I've started, and I overrun it a bit, and that causes cross vectors. I don't like to have a cross vector. The more care I take in the diagram, the less work it is to edit the vectors. This was quite different for me because I'm normally drawing diagrams or copying parts, but in this case I had to photograph the RV to get a picture of the graphic, print the graphic on a laser printer, and then use that print to draw out and produce myself a DXF file. Each section I draw, I complete it and close up that diagram using the close command. And then I restart it, draw the next letter. When I come close to where I started, I close it again. I actually took the graphic when it was on the pre-mask and I applied it to the RV just to see if the size was right on. It was just perfect. It was a perfect copy. Sort of shows you that some of these vintage graphics from way back can be reproduced. Again, all these red marks you see on the diagram, that's to remind me where I start. So when I come back around, I stay away about 1/8 of an inch and let the computer close it in. That saves a lot of crossed vectors. We're almost finished on the Bigfoot text, and now I'll turn around and I'll resave the file. I usually call it my final. So now I've taken that larger diagram of the Bigfoot critter and I applied it to the drawing table, and I'm going to draw this alone. This is a bit more complicated than the text Bigfoot. That's the great part about digitizing these files, because you can make it any size you want. You can make it 4 feet by 3 feet, whatever. It turned out the RV was 22 inches by about 13 inches full size. And that's the size I cut. So I'm going to end up with two files. One will be the Bigfoot text and one will be the Bigfoot critter. Each of these files, I'll cut the vinyl separately. Now I'm going to run Vectric Aspire 9.5 and load the two DXF files I created. I also place both files on top of each other just like the decal on the RV. The files look good, there's no editing required, the vectors are good, we're all set to go. Here I've loaded the Bigfoot text into the vinyl cutter and I programmed a cut, and that's a 24-inch roll and I'm cutting it around 22 inches wide. I'm amazed at how fast this cutter cuts, and I'm actually got it slowed down a bit. Here I've removed the background and I've applied the pre-mask, getting ready to put it onto the substrate. Now I loaded the Bigfoot critter DXF file into the vinyl cutter, and I'm going to cut two of them side by side just because it'll make good use of the 24-inch roll. There's really not much sense of having scrap vinyl kicking around because you can only use pieces that are at least 10 by 10. It's difficult to show it cutting, but the cut is there. And in the last picture there, I actually show the cut. Here I've selected the vinyl to be cut right off. This picture here shows the cut. Here it's all weeded. I'm getting ready to apply the pre-mask and apply it to the substrate. And there it's done.